The silk tie around James Harrison's neck was worth more than my first car. He sat across from my desk, flanked by his legal team, trying to hide his discomfort at having to negotiate with the stepdaughter he'd once dismissed from his prestigious law firm. "Diana," he began, forcing a smile. "You're looking professional." 10 years hadn't softened his condescension. I remembered standing in his oak-paneled office, fresh out of college, hoping my perfect SAT scores and scholarship to Yale Law would finally make him see me as more than just the cleaning lady's daughter who'd married up into the Harrison family. "Let's skip the small talk," I said, opening the merger file. "Harrison and Associates needs this approval to merge with Evergreen Corporation. The deadline is Friday. And I'm the only commissioner on the ethics board who hasn't signed off." My half-brother Thomas shifted in his expensive chair. He'd made partner last year, a merit-based promotion that had nothing to do with our father owning the firm. "The merger documents are in order," he said, sliding them across my desk. "Standard procedure." I picked up the file, taking my time. Like the Rodriguez case was standard procedure? The color drained from James's face. Maria Rodriguez, a cleaning lady like my mother had been, who'd filed a workplace safety complaint against Evergreen Corp 3 years ago. Harrison and Associates had buried her case so deep, most people thought it had disappeared. Most people didn't have my resources. "That case was settled," Thomas said quickly. "Was it?" I pulled out another file, thicker, newer. "Because my investigation suggests otherwise." James's fake smile vanished. "Investigation? Did you really think I became ethics commissioner just to approve mergers?" I turned my computer screen to show them the evidence I'd spent years gathering. "Every case your firm buried. Every worker you silenced. Every judge you influenced." "You can't prove dash," Thomas started. "Actually, I can. And on Friday, I'm presenting my findings to the State Bar Association." I leaned back in my chair. "Unless what?" James asked, his legal pad forgotten in his lap. "Unless we renegotiate. Not just the merger terms but how Harrison and Associates conducts business going forward." "You're blackmailing us?" Thomas sounded almost impressed. "No, brother dear. I'm offering you a chance to do what you should have done years ago, practice law ethically." James stood abruptly. "This is absurd. We'll appeal to the other commissioners dash. Who already have copies of my report?" I smiled. "Sit down, James. It's time you learned how real lawyers negotiate." The great James Harrison, terror of the courtroom, sank back into his chair. For the first time in my life I saw fear in his eyes. "Now," I said, pulling out my own legal pad, "let's talk about pro bono requirements, workplace safety protocols, and your firm's new ethics oversight committee. I think you'll find my terms non-negotiable. 50% of your billable hours dedicated to pro bono work?" Thomas's voice cracked. "That's impossible. The partners will never dash." "The partners," I interrupted, "will do exactly what's necessary to avoid disbarment." I slid copies of my evidence across the table. "Maria Rodriguez wasn't the only case you buried. Just the one that led me to the others." James flipped through the pages, his face growing paler with each document. Case files, bank transfers, emails, 10 years of meticulous investigation laid bare. "How did you get these?" he whispered. "Remember Monica from your IT department? The one you called just a tech girl?" I smiled. "She's my deputy commissioner now. Turns out being underestimated makes people very good at gathering evidence." The door opened and my assistant Michael walked in with coffee. James and Thomas stiffened. They recognized him. 3 years ago he'd been a homeless pre-law student seeking help at their firm's community outreach event, the one they'd staged for press photos before turning everyone away. "Your 2 o'clock called," Michael said, setting my coffee down. "Judge Martinez wants to know if you're still meeting about the Public Defender Funding Initiative." I noticed James flinch at the judge's name. Martinez had been another diversity hire they'd pushed out years ago. Now she was the senior judge on the appeals court, and a close ally in my reform efforts. "Tell her we're still on," I replied. "And Michael, bring in the Rodriguez files." "All of them?" He raised an eyebrow. "Every single one." Thomas loosened his tie. "Diana, be reasonable. You can't expect us to completely restructure our firm because of some old cases dash." "Old cases?" I pulled up the latest complaint on my screen. This one's from last week. Another cleaning lady, another workplace injury, another cover-up. Some things never change, do they, James? My stepfather's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his water. What exactly do you want? Besides the pro bono commitment? A complete overhaul of your hiring practices. No more country club nepotism. Merit-based promotions only. That's rich, Thomas scoffed, coming from someone who graduated summa cum laude from Yale Law while working 2 jobs? I cut in. Who passed the bar on the first try while you were on attempt number 3? Or did you think I wouldn't find out about those sealed records too? Michael returned with a cart loaded with files, the full Rodriguez investigation. 10 boxes of documents, surveillance footage and witness statements. This is what real legal work looks like, I said, watching their faces. Not cocktail parties and backroom deals, but actual justice. Something you'd know if you'd ever practiced it. The merger deadline, James reminded me weakly. We don't have time for a complete restructuring before Friday. Then I suggest you start now. I handed them a thick contract. My terms are on page 1. The evidence that will destroy your firm starts on page 2. Choose carefully. I stared at the Wall Street Journal article framed in my office. Harrison and Associates announces historic pro bono initiative. 6 months of forced reform had transformed the firm I'd once dreamed of joining into something actually worth being proud of. Your mother's here, Michael announced, breaking my reverie. Mom looked different now, less makeup, simpler clothes. Leaving James had stripped away her need to prove herself worthy of the Harrison name. The women's shelter called, she said, sitting down. Maria Rodriguez is doing well in her paralegal program. Good. I smiled, remembering Maria's face when we'd reopened her case. How's the support group going? Mom had started a network for domestic workers fighting workplace abuse, turning her years of silence into something powerful. Growing. We have 30 members now. Some are even considering legal action. Send them to Harrison and Associates, I said. Thomas needs the pro bono hours. Speaking of my half-brother, he'd surprised everyone by throwing himself into workplace safety cases. Turned out he was a decent lawyer when he actually had to work for it. James called again, Mom said quietly. He wants to meet. Let me guess. The country club's annual charity gala? He says the firm's reputation is suffering. Old clients don't trust the new direction. I pulled up Harrison and Associates' latest financials on my screen. Really? Because their revenue is up 30% since implementing my changes. Turns out ethical practice attracts better clients. Diana. Mom hesitated. He mentioned your father's old cases. My hand froze over the keyboard. Dad had been a public defender before the accident that killed him, an accident that had always seemed too convenient, happening right after he'd started investigating corporate corruption cases. What about them? James, he had files. Cases your father was working on before he died. Cases involving some of the firm's biggest clients. The pieces clicked into place. Why James had been so eager to marry Mom, why he'd pushed so hard to control my career path. He was monitoring us. There's more. Mom pulled out a USB drive. I found this in his study before I left. It has everything: emails, court records, surveillance reports. He'd been watching your father for months before the accident. My throat tightened. Does Thomas know? No. And that's what scares James the most. He's afraid you'll tell him. I took the drive, thinking of my half-brother's recent transformation. Finding out his father's role in my father's death would destroy him. The gala's tomorrow night, Mom said. All the old guard will be there, celebrating their charitable contributions to the community. Perfect timing. I picked up my phone. Michael, call Judge Martinez. Tell her to bring the warrants. Warrants. Mom's eyes widened. For conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and evidence tampering. I stood straightening my jacket. It's time the Harrison legacy got a final makeover. Diana. Mom grabbed my hand. Be careful. James still has powerful friends. So do I. I showed her my phone messages from dozens of former Harrison and Associates employees, all ready to testify. And unlike his, mine actually believe in justice. The next evening, I walked into the country club's grand ballroom wearing the same suit I'd worn the day James rejected my job application. The whispers started immediately, the cleaning lady's daughter, now holding the fate of their precious firm in her hands. James stood at the podium, preparing to announce another year of token charitable giving. He froze mid-sentence when Judge Martinez walked in, flanked by federal agents. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, taking the microphone, "let me tell you a story about real charity, about a public defender who gave his life fighting corporate corruption, and the men who thought they could bury the truth along with him." The room fell silent as the agents moved through the crowd. In the back, Thomas stood watching, his world about to shatter. Sometimes justice isn't about winning cases. Sometimes it's about exposing the rot beneath the polished marble floors and mahogany panels. Sometimes it's about showing the world that true legal ethics aren't inherited, they're earned, one hard truth at a time. The aftermath of the gala arrests played out across every major news network. Harrison conspiracy exposed. Top law firm implicated in death of public defender. The headlines kept coming, each one peeling back another layer of corruption. Thomas hadn't spoken to me since that night. He sat in my office now, looking like he'd aged a decade in a week. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. "When you started the ethics investigation, did you know about Dad's involvement?" "No," I replied honestly. "I was looking for justice for Maria Rodriguez. Your father's crimes, that was just where the evidence led." He nodded slowly, fingering the worn edges of our father's case files. All those times he talked about maintaining the Harrison legacy, he was just covering his tracks. "The firm doesn't have to die with him, Thomas." I slid a proposal across the desk. "But it needs to change. Really change, not just surface reforms. A complete restructuring?" He scanned the documents. "Converting to a public interest firm? With a focus on corporate accountability and workers' rights." I pulled up the new business plan. "Your father's old clients are jumping ship anyway. Why not build something worth believing in? Using their own money." Thomas almost smiled, reading the details. "The irony would kill Dad if the prison sentence doesn't." James had been denied bail, too many mysterious accidents happening to potential witnesses over the years. His country club friends had scattered like roaches in sunlight, each trying to cut deals before the federal investigation reached them. "There's something else," I said, pulling out another file. "Dad's last case. He was investigating wage theft at cleaning companies contracted by major law firms. Mom's support group is full of witnesses." I nodded. "Women who've been silenced for years, afraid of losing their jobs. They're ready to talk now." A knock at the door interrupted us. Maria Rodriguez entered, carrying a stack of legal briefs. She'd finished her paralegal program early with honors. "The witness statements are ready," she announced. "And Judge Martinez approved the class action certification." Thomas studied her for a moment. "You knew about all of this?" "I knew something was wrong when your firm buried my case," she replied. "Commissioner Walker helped me understand why." "Diana," he corrected quietly. "My sister's name is Diana." The words hung in the air, the first time he'd acknowledged our relationship without qualification or contempt. The federal prosecutor called. Michael appeared in the doorway. "They're offering James a deal if he testifies against his co-conspirators." "Let me guess," I said. "He wants to protect his legacy?" "Actually," Michael smiled grimly, "he wants to protect his son. Says he'll confess to everything if they leave you out of it, Thomas." Thomas laughed bitterly. "Now he wants to be paternal? The question is," I leaned forward, "what do you want to do about it?" My brother, and for the first time that word felt real, straightened his shoulders. "I want to help build something better. Something Dad would actually be proud of."